You're watching the Original Music Podcast with your hosts Raymond Hems and Rick Gathman.
All right, here we are, episode 20. We have the SPLITZ, a band out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Tonight we have John and Scotty with the SPLITZ. How you guys doing? Good to have you guys on.
Thanks for having us.
I love it. I love it. My name is Ray Hems, and this is Rick Gathman.
Hey, fellas.
We've been doing this for about a month now, and we're rolling. We got 20 episodes in a month, and we're having the best time meeting new people from different places in Atlanta, different places like Jersey, but there's a common thread every time we do one of these things that there's a common thread because it's original music that it's like talking to friends. And everybody has the same goal of just writing what's on their heart. So when I heard your guys' material, I was really impressed with the style and the production of it. And I wanted to have you guys on. Can you give us a little bit of the background behind the SPLITZ? John, I think you, who started the band and how'd you get the name?
Well, that's an interesting story. Actually, we started the band in '86, technically.
Yeah.
Scott and I had worked together for a number of years. He was on the road with another band. I was on the road with another band. But the common thread was Mark Arnold, our bass player, who recently passed away.
Oh, sorry.
He and I were on the road doing something. We came back. We were both pretty miserable. I called Scott's mom, and I didn't know Scott was on the road. So I called and I talked to her for about 45 minutes on the phone. She says, well, I'll get a hold of Scott. I'll have him call you. Well, it took about a month and a half, and he called me and said, hey, I'll be home such and such a date, December, January. And, from there, we just came together. As far as the name goes, that's kind of a point of contention.
Oh, okay.
Because
I like it.
I was a huge Split Enz fan.
Oh.
And Split Enz had recently broke up.
Right.
And I wanted to do a play on words because I was hoping that we would be a little more along the lines of Split Enz. And so the SPLITZ with a Z, that's where that comes from. And it was a bitter, it wasn't bitter, but it was kind of a feud. It really came down to our original lead singer wanted the SPLITZ along with myself. Our bassist and Scott, they weren't excited about it. And it was either that or Lucky Charms. So when we put the Lucky Charms thing on the table, Scott kind of said, all right, well, I don't want to be in Lucky Charms. So that's really where it comes from in a nutshell.
They are magically delicious. So
I've got a really good friend of mine that lives in St. Louis, and I was talking to him last night on Facebook, and he put a picture of himself from the 90s, early 90s, like I think it was 91, literally the picture. And he said, name this band to all of his friends. And it turns out that the name of the band was Cherry SPLITZ. So
the Cherry SPLITZ.
No, Cherry SPLITZ.
Not Cherry SPLITZ, not the. Well, so let's go back to the history. Scotty, you are the drummer in the SPLITZ.
Yeah.
And
most important guy in the band, right?
Obviously, the most important guy in the band.
Right.
And you guys actually organized in the 80s. So we could call you literally an 80s band.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ironically, we didn't see each other for many years in between the last, I'd say, 10 or a dozen years. And then when John called me, I've always been amazed at John's writing abilities. I love his style. He's a phenomenal guitarist.
Nice.
And then when he came in with these, electronic sounds that he was using on his guitars for everything else, it was like, well, we don't need a keyboard player. We don't need and he can play bass. Let's just do it. You and me. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I've been a studio musician my whole life. I've done 150 different albums with 40 different bands. And, I've been in the studio a lot. So when John called and said, I want to get in the studio, where do we go?
Yeah.
The first one was in the early 90s, right, John? Or mid 90s?
I think it was actually, I think it was Mark and Tim. I was actually in the northern part of this. And I think you guys, records? I don't remember, but I mean, you guys were very instrumental in I know Mark had called me and said, hey, before we lose what we have from the 80s, let's record this.
Right.
And I mean, this was after.
Yeah.
I mean, this is post Slash Warner record, Slash Warner offered us a deal in 90. And, that's a whole nother story, a whole nother situation. But when they called me in 92, I mean, everybody had gotten on with life. Scott was a full-time musician. Everybody was either, we were all in our mid-20s,
right. Right.
And so you kind of come together, and I thought, well, this is going to be great. We're back.
Right.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have been any more wrong. I mean, everybody just kind of scattered and went their own way again.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we did. We went into the studio the first time. It was Dovetail Records, Heartlander Records in Dovetail Studios.
Yeah.
In Milwaukee.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd already done like 7-8 of their albums there, and I was in a big band called Soul Patrol, which was like signed to Heartlander Records. It's kind of like Pearl Jam meets Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Oh, wow.
Blues, rock and roll in your face type of stuff. Yeah. So then when we got the band together to record the ideas, we basically went in there live and just knocked these songs out in a few days, or the old songs, I should say.
Yeah.
And that was it. And we were like, okay, bye.
Yeah, right. No.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was.
I got to tell you, if we went in and mixed those things down and put them on an album and put it out as it was, there was no click track for these sessions because we just didn't have the time to figure that part out. And I was pretty solid with click tracks, but we just said, let's, feel it through live. And we just recorded it. And the engineer is phenomenal that I was working with. I brought in so many different projects because of his, Jeff, if you remember, John, Jeff Everett.
Jeff was great. He was great.
Yeah, he just he knew how to find that snap on the kick.
Yep.
And, just take a live sound and make it sound like a live Pearl Jam recording. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Nice.
Now, when you guys, you guys are recording back then, we're talking about 2-inch tape. You're talking about no grid. You're talking about.
It was 24 tracks or 16 channels. Yeah. No, 24 channels, 16 tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in those days, you rehearsed your band up and you got, you got your song or your set tight by doing gigs and stuff. And then you would go in the studio and you would have the songs. You've played them 30 different ways. And you decide on one of them, and then you go in there and you throw it down, and it gets recorded, and then it gets bounced down back then to like 1/4-inch tape or remember the ADAT? Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
probably still have that tape, John, right?
Yeah,
it's 1/2-inch Ampex tape.
Okay.
I still have it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I had a 1/2-inch machine with for a while. Yeah.
But that's what it was bounced.
Oh, you bounced down to 1/2-inch.
Yeah, we bounced down to 1/2-inch.
We would rehearse it run it through, and then play it live. That was just some of those tracks, the way they were done, just so tight.
Yeah.
Because we had done it so many times through our lives. And then, we're older and smarter and better musicians when we did go in the studio.
Yeah.
And it was just so much fun because you get 1 or 2 takes, and especially from the drum parts, it was like, oh, I just love this stuff. And I wish I would have pushed the band more then, because what we came out with was a really good product.
Right.
It never got released.
Yeah. Well, that's the
amazing part of that project and that album, which eventually became what was named -1, because our keyboardist, or sometime keyboardist, had left.
Yeah.
the whole thing behind that was we had not rehearsed or played together in almost a year and a half. And we went into the studio cold.
Wow.
To do that. So that is actually going to be released late this year with all the fixes.
Nice.
And
so
yeah, I mean, it was amazing. It was an amazing process.
So that being recorded back then has obviously been digitized and brought into kind of a modern DAW, as they say, digital audio workstation. Somebody's done that process.
You're doing that at Cherry Pit Studios, right, John?
Well, what we actually did is we took the original tape, sent it off to the tape farm outside of Nashville, had that, converted over to digital,
right?
Sent it over to Cherry Pit Studios. Eric LaBrosse, love you, buddy, in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin.
Menominee Falls, I've been there.
Yeah, I mean,
I've been there.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost done. I mean,
yeah. And what will that be released under? What would that be called? Will that be the Splits, or would that be?
It'll be under the Splits. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I'm just a recording nerd. So once you got it bounced down to, back in the day, once you got it bounced down to the 1/2 inch, did you guys do mastering back then? Like send it off to be mastered like we do now digitally?
No, nothing was done from that point on. It was based on cassettes.
Oh, okay.
Mixed down, a cold mix.
To adapt.
And that was it. We
did
it.
To a cold DAT.
If you take the old mix and mastered it, that would be probably a thing to hear too as well.
Yeah. Let's talk.
Well, that's it. That's. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But let's go to. Scott, you sound like you like your drums sounds and stuff. Let's go drummer to drummer here and talk about
like you see me over here just like waiting to ask.
Yeah, like Rick wants in on this. When you go into the studio, are there miking techniques or certain mics that you really want to have,
or do you do electronic, or do you like
MIDI?
Are you old school and you just do nothing but acoustics?
I worked in like 5 different studios more than a few times in Milwaukee and around Milwaukee, and then a couple in LA.
Yeah.
And it's usually what the engineer wants and how, because I work with some, guys that are friends of mine that I really respect and what they do.
Sure.
Eric being one from Cherry Pit now with the SPLITZ project. And I've done a few albums with him as well, outside of SPLITZ, but Eric comes in, he's got a lot of triggering that he likes to use, and he's got a catalog. He and I basically spent a few days mastering some really good mic'd techniques and just tried different things for a few days. And then he would record that sound and put it in a catalog, a Scotty B catalog, basically.
Wow.
So you did,
he can pull up that.
So you did triggers on an acoustic drum, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
So explain that.
My entire Tama kit there.
Yeah,
Tama.
Explain that.
It's a Neil Peart size drum set.
Oh wow!
I bought it 30 years ago for a lot of money.
Yeah. But
it was the thing back then. It was a Tama Art Star 2, and it was the thing of the future. And that was 33 years ago or whatever. John, you remember when I got it? It was like, oh.
So what kind of triggers were you using?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of triggers?
What kind of triggers were you using 30 years ago?
Oh no, not triggers then. No.
Oh, okay. This is just straight up drums.
More recent.
Right.
Yeah. Just more so in Cherry Pit than any other studio.
Gotcha.
Eric is he won, believe it or not, the Whammy Awards, Wisconsin Area Music Industry. I did an album with him now too, with Bad Boy, a band that I drum for. It's the original singer from Cheap Trick. Ironically, another big band that Sean loved and loves, I should say, grew up loving.
Yeah.
And so Bad Boy went in and we recorded with that Tama kit, and literally they listened to the SPLITZ album and they said, well, if we can get this sound in that studio, we'll go to that studio. Because it was all about drums came out, and how Eric and I more or less found the right sounds and triggering, of course. Yeah. He's really good that way. He's probably one of the fastest editors on the fly that I've ever seen. You can say, "Hey, I hear one little itty bitty," and you go.
Yeah, it's nice to have an engineer that can do that.
Yeah, they do it real time,
especially when you're paying for
it
by the hour.
I'm like sitting in the booth with him, and I'll tell him I have a notepad of things I listen to on the rough tracks that he'll send me via email, and I'll just make all my notes, and I'll go in there, and it's just bam, 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 bam. I'm thinking it's going to take us 3 hours, and he's done in 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's how Ray is. Between him and I'm like, I don't know. What would he think? And all of a sudden, he's boom, it's done.
Yeah.
Before I'm done explaining, he's got it done.
And that's the thing is that because you're in there with pros like-minded with you, they already know what you hear because they heard it also. Right. And so you make those things change. You fix stuff or you change stuff on the fly because I heard it.
Right.
Yeah. Somebody else heard it. It's like, okay, we don't really even need to talk about it. We're just going to make it right.
Good point. Yep.
So, John, I'm not going to say that you're the brains of the operation, but as a composer for the Giza Is Gone project that we do, I know that you are, you're composing a lot of the stuff. What is your background? When did you first pick up an instrument, and what instrument was it?
I first picked up guitar at 7 years old.
Wow.
A really horrible acoustic guitar.
Yep.
That my stepdad had. My stepdad was a pro player. He was in a country and western band. And it was a room that was not heated.
Nice.
And it was a great cheese cutter. If you can imagine laying your guitar flat on your lap like a lap steel and then running blocks of Colby, cheddar, Swiss, or whatever.
Yeah.
It was great for that, but it wasn't much for playing guitar. I really didn't get serious about playing guitar till I was about 10 or 11.
Wow.
And
late bloomer, huh?
From there it went pretty quick. Yeah, really a late bloomer. Yeah.
That's how I started too. With an electric guitar I bought from my brother-in-law at the time. It was a Harmony.
Oh yeah, Harmony,
which I think was from Sears and Roebuck.
Do you remember the name of the brand of that said guitar?
I don't. Don't. I know we had a lot of. No, it was like some Sears or J.C. Penney.
Yeah.
It was something my stepdad had laying around. He also had I remember it was a Goya.
Oh yeah, I had a Goya. I have a Goya in the other room.
Do you really?
A Goya.
Of course you do.
Yes, I do.
Classical guitar. It was awful too. It was too big for my hands. So
yeah.
But I mean, that's what I started. I mean, I was kind of lucky though. My first guitar was a Gibson ES 335.
Holy cow!
And whereas it wasn't the Les Paul Custom or the Dean Elite that I wanted.
Right.
I mean, it was a pretty, for a kid 12 years old, I mean, that's a hell of a guitar.
Do you still have it?
Probably bigger than you at the time.
Do you still have it?
No, I actually traded it in 1985 for the Jackson that you hear on everything today.
Oh, right. Okay. So
do you regret that move, or are you?
No, absolutely not. I'm not a big Gibson guitar fan.
Okay. Fair enough.
Hey, can we go down the road of why? I have my reasons. I don't play Gibson anymore either, and I got a bunch of them in the other room.
I mean, honestly, for me, I think the big thing was it just comes down to scale.
Yeah.
I'm not a 24 3/4 scale guy.
Yep.
Once I made the switch to Kramer and then Charvel and then Jackson.
Yeah.
Is that what most
Gibsons are? They're not 22?
Is it all Gibsons or all Les Pauls are 24 3/4?
Well, as far as I know, most Gibsons are 24 3/4.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I played Hamer for a while. I played Dean for a while.
Yeah.
Again, that's a Gibson scale. It just didn't work for me.
Right. And that's an interesting thing for me. And I've not said this on the podcast. The scale, the curvature of the headstock that breaks off every time you just sneeze on it.
That's because it was mahogany, right?
No, it's the flat. It's the angle of the bend of the headstock, and then the G string, because of the scale and the tilt of the headstock. It just never was intonation. I mean, pickups and playability maybe is okay, and I mean tone is amazing, power is amazing, but those other things take it away from being my everyday. I can just pick this up and I know it's going to be there for me.
Dependable.
Yeah. So, but that's my rant
Interesting.
on that. But so you were 10. You started getting serious about it. When did you start your first band? What was the name of it?
Well, Scott was actually in that first band. That would have been my freshman year in high school. The band was Black Pearl. I was a rhythm guitar player and a really lousy singer. And Scott was a drummer. I mean, when you have a drummer from Scott was in 7th grade, and he was a jazz trained drummer at that point. Wow.
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
What made you decide to play the hardest style of music to play? You just liked jazz, or?
I was I'm like well-trained jazz. I can read music, marching band, all that, drum corps.
Right.
Studied with Buddy Rich for a week, and in different. I did Count Basie Hall.
Hold on, can we
go back?
Can I
to
halt that for a second? Did you just tell me that you trained with Buddy Rich for a week?
Yeah, we did the invitationals in Kansas City at the Count Basie Hall. And I was first in state for 3 years in a row, and then I came in third in nationals, jazz drumming.
Right.
And then I love Neil Peart. So, my marching band discipline with my big band jazz, it was like learning discipline, marching band. Neil Peart's very disciplined. Of course, he does everything the same way every day. And then jazz drumming was learning how to walk around the tempo and, walk around the groove.
Leave a song and come back in on time.
Yeah. My mom wanted me to be Neil Diamond, and my dad wanted me to be Buddy Rich.
Oh, wow.
So my mom bought me a guitar, and my dad bought me a drum set.
Wow.
That's how I ended up with all that.
Well, you obviously have some talent if they both recognized that you can do both.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
I don't know many people that can say they played or trained or met
with Buddy Rich. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's legit.
Yeah,
I could go on a list. I'm in a drummer book, believe it or not, with a bunch of these guys.
What's the name of the book? Let's look it up. What is it?
Sticks and Skins.
Sticks and Skins.
Sticks and Skins. Yeah, you can look it up.com.
It's
400 of the top drummers in the world. It's not 400 of the best drummers, but 400 of the top drummers.
Yeah. Now, wasn't Neil Peart kind of a jazz guy? Well, I went and saw Rush, and he went into a jazz solo in the middle of his drum thing.
I know this is going to drive a lot of people crazy real quick.
Yeah.
It's Neil Peart.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm only saying that. I'm only saying that for my drummer friends because I've called him Peart for 50 years. So I just know there's going to be.
I think we still call him Peart.
Yeah. I do too. Yeah. So, but I know that it's properly Peart, but that's okay.
Yeah. There's a lot we could talk about with that guy.
Yeah. I mean, wasn't trying to derail the train there. So I apologize.
Well, you just did.
You shut it down. You shut it down.
We are going to be good friends.
Yeah.
I can see it now.
Yeah. So the name of your first band, we like to ask this question.
With the Black Pearl, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What was your worst band breakup? It sounds like you guys are longevity guys. Like you get in a band, you're actually brothers and you spend a lot of time together. But I'm sure there was some passing through some projects that was that didn't end well or didn't make it anywhere. Do you have a good story of the worst band breakup? Anybody?
John might remember more than I do.
Don't get me started.
I was going to say he's laughing already.
I was always like, whatever. You know, everybody else is like, fuck you.
Right.
That's the one F-bomb. Okay.
Yeah. You're allotted a few of those.
You're allowed as many as you need.
John, you got some stories. What do you got for us there?
Well, the Black Pearl Band ended. We did a high school
prom,
talent show.
Yeah.
And the big event, yeah. And so Scott played drums. I was a rhythm guitar player and singer, and I proceeded to come out and before we started, tell everybody there was a party at somebody's house and we were all going to go out and get wasted. So, and it was dead quiet at the end of that comment. And we did our show, we did our shtick, and the next day I was.
Yeah, right.
I was fired.
You were you got fired because your drummer opened his mouth?
No, it wasn't the drummer. It was me that opened my mouth.
Oh, okay.
So the parents of the bassist and the lead guitarist at that time, determined that I was a bad influence. So I thought it was great. I mean, isn't it? It's all about the show, right? You know?
Of course.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you were all of 17 at that point, and hey, everybody, we're having a rave at my
13.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, attaboy.
13.
John, you're an animal. I love it.
What kind of music did Black Pearl play?
Yeah, what was that year? And what year? What year? What style? What year?
So it would have been 80. I would say we did some April Wine, some Zeppelin, some Skinner.
Okay.
You know, something along those lines. I don't really remember everything.
What April Wine song did you play? All Over Town?
Yeah, that's the song we opened with, was All Over Town.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's the closest thing, like kind of new wavy at that point.
Yeah.
You know, that was probably my influence on that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
My high school band played that song too. That was the go-to.
Great song.
It's a great song.
Yeah, I for whatever reason, I never really I didn't have exposure to April Wine, but I've always heard the name. And what was like their number one hit that I would know is not a follower?
I don't know. What would you say, John?
Just Between You and Me is probably their biggest song, but I'd say it's probably their campiest song. You know, I mean,
yeah.
I would agree. I think,
I missed that one for sure.
I love Miles Goodwin. He's got a great voice.
Yeah,
I think everything that he did and still does with April Wine is pretty cool. I don't really listen to them today, but great band. I love them.
Are they still playing?
A friend, Bobby Frisch, rocker, singer, dude, plays between Wisconsin and Florida, out of Michigan. And his guitarist is now the guitarist for April Wine. Ironically.
Okay, so
that's awesome.
They are still playing then, obviously.
Yeah,
right?
I had no idea.
They're doing the festival circuits every summer to make some money.
Sure.
Yeah. So you guys are in the Milwaukee area. One of the things, I don't know how much you guys are playing out, but I'm sure you're aware of the scene inside the city and in the suburbs. Are you seeing a lot of like tribute bands and that type of thing? What are you guys seeing?
I'm in a tribute band.
Oh, which one?
It's called Phil. It's all the music of Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins, and Genesis.
Oh, that's cool.
That's a nice catalog. I mean, you got a good catalog there for sure.
I'm sure that's an easy booker.
Yeah. John, what are your thoughts?
No, I'm serious. It's probably you guys. Do you play a lot with that band?
I think.
Yeah, it's. I started a few years ago, a year before, 2019. Sorry, and we did it like 4 big shows, and then COVID kind of just stopped everything. So this last couple year, I should say, the last 18 months, we started doing some, festival type stuff.
Yeah.
It's I got a really kick-ass drummer in that band, and then I do all front of stage drum stuff. Basically, a whole nother drum set except for a kick drum.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Well, expand
kind
on
of-
that because Phil Collins was kind of a good drummer, right?
Yeah, he was a great drummer.
Right.
Yeah. So
Phenomenal.
he did a lot of percussion stuff
got,
during the shows.
I'm gonna say Carter Buford. He's got help me out.
Who was the drummer with him when they doubled?
Chester Thompson.
Yes, Chester. Yeah.
Chester. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got so it's one of those. I mean, it's pretty cool. I grew up loved. John always knew this. That was Genesis and Peter Gabriel were like my biggest
man.
things.
Yeah.
What was your favorite song when you first heard Genesis? I know what mine was.
Would probably be Coming Off a Trick of the Tail.
Okay.
Wow.
I heard
And,
Abacab and it was all over.
Abacab.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, right.
Hey, do you guys
but
know the story of that song by chance?
That's the notes of the.
It's the chord
song.
progression of the song Abacab.
Are you serious?
Yes, it's actually
ABACAB.
yeah,
That's genius.
Abacab.
I never knew that.
yeah.
That's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool, actually. John, what are you saying on the tribute band thing? You either love them, you hate them, or you can deal with them, or what do you think?
I see an awful lot of tribute bands right now. I think it's almost for me it's kind of difficult because you get asked to do a lot of things outside the box and outside of your own group.
Mm-hmm.
For me to reprise things we were playing, in the 80s, I would have a hard time with it, but I get it. I mean, because these bands are not touring.
Right.
Legacy bands, I mean, there's very few quality legacy bands touring. And I would follow that by saying there's very few legacy bands touring with an original lineup.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think, for me,
mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Scott.
No, the last Genesis tour, they retired this last year. They had Phil Collins in a chair.
Yeah,
he can.
And then his son was drumming.
That's kind of cool, though. I'm all down with.
Then there was no world-class drummer. Chester wasn't there.
Right.
They've used Bill has used a couple other drummers through the years on his solo tours. But for me to go see Genesis like that, I just couldn't.
Yeah,
I agree. Do you know where did Chester
I
go?
know, and Daryl Sturmer, I know Daryl, the guitarist, because he's from Wisconsin. He lives in Milwaukee.
Right.
And still.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't even go and see the show when it came to town.
Well,
I didn't want to see it like that.
Yeah, expound on that, John. That the legacy band. That's a term that has come up on the podcast that I hadn't really heard before, but it makes sense. Like when you're talking about the tribute stuff. My thing is like kind of what you're saying is there's a legacy band, I don't know, called John Bon Jovi that is struggling. I'd rather go see Slippery When Wet, the local band here, because they're hitting the notes, or a Motley Crue tribute band because they're hitting the notes.
It's very true. I mean, some of the tribute bands you're seeing are actually, if you're not a musician and you're not nitpicking things to the very, last detail, I think there's a lot of great tribute bands out there that are actually putting on a better show than the legacy bands at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think once you start losing original members, I think you really lose the authenticity of the music. And at that point, you yourself actually become a tribute band. So for me, I know in our area, I mean, we've got a Def Leppard tribute band. We've got a Van Halen tribute band. I mean, you could run down the whole list of bands. For me, I'm not so into that. I mean, I would much rather go out and see original music, even if it's, not well done. I would still rather, we had an area in Milwaukee, it was known as the fashionable East Side. And back in the day, we couldn't get in there because they thought we were too much of a rock band. Wow. So you would go to places like the Boardwalk or Judges, some of these places, and they would say, hey, we like what we hear, but you guys are not going to resonate with our audience. Go to the North Side. So you'd go to the North Side, and pardon my French, but you'd go to a place like, I'm not going to drop their name. They're out of business, but they'd say, you guys are a bunch of art fags.
Right.
So for us, it was kind of difficult. We really had a hard time finding our niche, our area where.
With that, we were lake country boys, right? So we grew up 20, 30 miles west of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I lived in Milwaukee on the east side for 10 years after we kind of broke up. But we were lake country boys. When we did play any of the bars in the lake country area, there's like 9, 10, 11 lakes.
Yeah.
We would pack the bar, you know, because we were young.
Suburbs.
We were really young. There was a time where John remembers this. I wasn't old enough to be in a bar. My parents had to be there to let me play the gig.
Absolutely.
That was when it was 18 too. So
right.
I was 16 years old playing in a rock band, and mom and dad would just throw me in the car and take me to the gig and let me drum tonight.
Yeah.
You know, and then people would pack in because they go, you got to see these kids playing, because we were playing Rush, the Police, you know, Cheap Trick. You know, the beginning of the Splits was really when I thought that and John told me the story. My mom just passed away a couple months ago.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And John was reminiscing the days of us rehearsing in my parents' basement all the time. My mom was such a stickler about us practicing to get something done.
Wow.
Right, John?
Yeah.
About
there was no
disciplined.
screwing around. I mean,
don't hear that very often.
Right.
You know, it was absolutely insane sometimes, because I had been going there when we started the Splits. Our first rehearsal, I think, was January 2nd or 3rd. It was on a Tuesday of '87. That I remember.
Wow, you remember that?
And so when you went to Scott's parents' place, I was always the last guy there. I mean, I'll be late for my own funeral. So everybody would be downstairs. You could hear Scott playing drums. You could hear everybody doing their thing. But Scott's mom would be in the kitchen or getting ready for work or whatever she'd be doing. And out of respect, I always stopped and I would sit down at the table and talk to Scott's mom.
Right.
And, she would always ask how my mother was. And she knew we would be rehearsing anywhere between 8 and 14 hours.
Right.
So we would have a small conversation, and from there she would go, okay, well, you know where to go. Everybody's downstairs waiting for you. Why are you up here talking to me,
Yeah.
And it was out of respect. And I have to say this, and I just said this to Scott about maybe a month ago. I can only imagine what their electric bills were.
Sure.
Yeah.
Back in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
Because we had sometimes we had a PA, sometimes we didn't. Scott had a full light show around his kit with all these 100-watt floodlights, strobe lights, smoke machine.
Yeah.
We had mood. It was a mood thing.
Yeah.
And we would go 14 hours.
Yep.
Yeah. My dad was a designer architect, so he built this amazing rec room, basement bar and everything. And everything was indirect lighting.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you were rehearsing, not practicing.
Yeah, you were.
I mean, and fish tanks.
Yeah. In the wall.
That were 6-8 feet long.
Wow.
There was a
in the
camper
wall,
in the wall.
built into the wall.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, the parents of that
and
era,
red shag carpeting.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. That ended up with doobies in them.
My mom had
roaches everywhere.
Brad, there was all this.
Is that an actual chair from the basement?
It is.
That's awesome, dude. That is actually that is so cool.
So let me ask you guys.
That's awesome.
Jumping back real quick, if you don't mind me rewinding just for a minute.
Yeah, rewind.
Thank you for the tribute band situation.
Yeah.
I talked to a lot of people about this via texting or whatever on Facebook. And everybody, well, not everybody. I've got a lot of people that just bash on all these tribute bands, which I understand. My thing is, wouldn't you rather go see a legacy band such as, and I'm picking Foreigner because in my opinion they're the best, who's got one guy left that's original, and the singer they have is just fucking amazing. I mean, he pulls it off, and it's one of the best live bands that my wife and I both they're so amazing live as they are.
So I have to say, the band I drum for, Bad Boy, that I tour with, that I mentioned earlier, we've done probably 6, 7 shows with Foreigner through the years, the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And you're absolutely right. The bottom line is the singer nails it, and the band kicks ass.
Right.
And then ironically, this whole discussion about other tribute bands, there's a tribute band called Foreigner Forever out of Milwaukee. And the singer is one of my agents for the Phil show. He's booking the Phil show at all the theaters that they're doing. But cool. Anyhow, long story short, you were absolutely right. You couldn't have nailed a better.
Well, yeah. So my point is that I would rather go see a band like Foreigner that has just one original guy left and still see them live, hearing the songs that I grew up with played with just such excellence. Better, I mean, honestly, better than they originally were, in my opinion, some of them, than for it to just go away altogether, So I don't know. I mean, it goes both ways.
Very rare.
It's like people saying you can't have. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You picked one very rare situation.
Well,
and it happened.
It's like you can't have Van Halen without Eddie, or you can't have Van Halen without Dave or Sammy or whatever. It depends on how you look at it. You can look at it a couple of different ways. Yeah. The tribute bands, there's what we could probably pick 5 that every city has one of. Our city, unfortunately, has a couple of Def Leppard bands, a couple of Journey bands, a couple.
Absolutely.
It's like, all right, they're not bad, they're not excellent, they're there, and they're good, and if it draws a certain audience.
I think if you keep it in that perspective, and you're there to see that, and you have an open mind, I think you're fine with that. Yeah, right. I mean, I think I honestly don't have a problem with tribute bands. I honestly don't. Is it something that I frequent? No. Right. But it's fun. I mean, for those that are, whether it's Def Leppard, Bon Jovi, Van Halen,
absolutely,
whatever the band is, if that's what you want to hear, and that band isn't touring, and that's as close as you get, and you want to go out and have a night on the town, absolutely.
That's the point.
I think the other thing is,
chicks love it.
Going back to the Foreigner Forever band that I mentioned from Milwaukee. They had asked me, and they've been together now maybe 4 years, maybe 5 at the most. But in the very beginning, they had asked me to be the drummer for that band. And okay, sounds like a good idea. La la la. Like Foreigner, seen them, met them, done, blah blah blah. And I got to tell you, the third rehearsal, I walked out of there and I was like, yeah, you got to really love who you're tributing to,
right?
Or doing a tribute to.
Yeah.
And I didn't love them that much. And that's when I was like, I told them literally after the third long rehearsal that I was just like, you guys, my heart's not in it. I can feel it in my stomach. I'm not going to like this.
Yeah. And that's a good point.
2 years later, I'm like, if I'm going to be in a tribute band, I'm going to play the music I love.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a very important decision to make. If you're a musician and you're going to go down that road, you better be playing what you really, really enjoyed as a kid, and really buy into it, because that's all you're going to be playing. Like, I know guys in the Pink Floyd tribute band, that would be an easy one for me, because I love to play David Gilmour. Yeah. But I don't want to be David Gilmour, so I'm Raymond Hems, and I write my own material, and I basically do my best David Gilmour and compose the best stuff I can.
Agree.
I always thought that the best, if I was going to do a tribute band, it would be a Men Without Hats tribute band, and I would do one song in 16 different styles. I would do it in reggae. I would do it every different way, and I would do You Can Dance If You Want to. You know, I would do Safety Dance for an hour and a half.
It really is a fine line you walk. And, you know, I sort of go back, you know, thinking tribute in the term that's used today. When we formed the Splits, the big thing we did not want was to be a top 40 band. We were all desperate to get the hell away from that as fast as we could.
Right.
And so obviously not having enough original material at that point, obviously you got to do what you got to do to get people, you know, put asses in the seats, you know?
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of Police, a lot of REM, a ton of U2.
Yeah.
And that, you know, I don't know if that was considered tribute at that time, but
no, you were just
if you're
a cover
doing 5,
band.
6,
just a
7
cover band playing good covers.
Yeah.
So
We did do YYZ.
Woo!
there you go.
Woo!
We did do
Just to
YYZ.
prove you could.
Yeah.
So
We did at one time. I think we were doing all of 2112,
Wow.
at least one side of the album. If I
Wow.
remember.
So then
correctly.
you switched over to doing all original at what point?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a fine line you walk too. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think
And
I
how
think
did you
the
do it? Was
first
really
the first go around was really never fully all original, because
yeah.
at that point you're writing and you're playing, and then you have, you know, inevitably you have you know, band personnel problems.
Yeah.
And
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I
Never,
don't. I honestly, yeah. I mean,
never had one.
I honestly don't know that we were ever fully original. But by 90, you know, when Slash Warner came to town and was interested in us, they were clearly interested in what we were doing musically. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of get to that point where they make you do a test market show. They want to see what you
Yes.
have.
Yeah.
They want to see what your influences are. But at the same time, I mean, to say that we were ever 100%, no, there's no way, because we would.
No.
I think either way, we still would have done some Beatles or something crazy. And,
Sure.
Yeah.
But I truly believe now with the new albums, the last 2 albums, and all that, John, you know, if we take
Yeah.
the 8 or 10 songs we did 25 years ago and add the other 26 we have now, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
we there's no reason we can't go out and do some cool all
Yeah.
original shows.
Yeah.
With you put John
So-
on.
so this is-
I always told John, I said, John, the second you want to go on the road or even do a few shows,
I love
to
that.
do these songs, I have the guys. you
I
know?
love that. I love that. So just real quick, John, I know you have a thought. I want you to hold that thought.
Sure.
Just to see the chemistry of you two guys having each other's backs since night. I'm getting goosebumps on my arms.
There's excitement there still.
Yeah, I have goosebumps on my arms because, you know, you're writing songs 30 years later or more, and you guys still have the passion to go, hey, you want to do a show? I got the guys. Let's do it. I got a band. Let's go. You know, I think that's what it's all about. So continue.
I played the albums at parties, post shows, pre-show, on boats, big boats down here in Florida, back home at parties, and people are like, "Who the hell is this?" And you know, all my musician guys in one of the 4 bands. I have a band called the Us Project, which is like 36 different musicians I use to circulate around a bunch of shows and stuff. And they've all heard it, and they're all like, "Hey, have you ever doing a show with that band? I'm in." You know, like 3 different keyboard players. I want to nail all of his keyboard parts from his guitar.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
That's amazing. His orchestration that he's put together and everything is just, I was so like, this is it. And Eric, the studio guy, when he started working with John, and those guys would just sit there for days, and it would be like, this is it. This is awesome. You know?
John, your thoughts on that? as far as having the passion still all these years later, and you guys are still writing killer stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, the big thing was when I left the group in '92, it was really, I was tired of being broke and hungry,
Yeah.
And you get your life together, you start a business, you get married, you figure your life out. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
But you still have that fire. And I'll say this, the one thing that I've always done throughout my entire life is I've never done something so serious where if the time comes, I can just go.
Yeah.
But we get airplay all around the world. It's an amazing thing, and it's kind of crazy to think that all these years later, especially, I mean, I can't wait for the old, the old material to come out, because
I want to hear it.
For me, that's very special.
Yeah.
But the last 2 albums and this new album is going to be very, very different.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to be doing shows, but I think you have to have a purpose. And I think the big thing is, hey, it all comes down to show me the money.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound like some idiot.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is it really the time involved to write the material and sit down? Literally the last 5 years, I've spent in a room about 8 feet behind me.
Yep.
And it's tough. I mean, it really is tough. You have to juggle personal life, business life, and it's really no different than back in the day. It really is.
Yeah, it sounds extremely like my story too.
Very similar situation.
Yeah, I've recorded for 5-6 years, and I'm in 3 different bands. Material that didn't make it in either of those 2 bands ended up being my COVID band that I created when they locked me down. That was the wrong thing to do, because I was going to create something. And but I want to play some material. I'd like to play the track "Run to You" off of the Mortality Curve record. You can find this on Spotify, and then I would like to talk a little bit more about your recording process in that room 8 feet behind you after we get done with this.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
I'm going to get a beer.
To you, I'm
Yeah, I love that, man.
Dude,
I got to remember that.
that's straight up badass. 1, 2, very, to me, like I heard 80s Rush.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, am I wrong?
Yeah, like right, like I don't know the Rush albums in that era, but like Subdivisions and that,
No, way past that.
earlier than that.
Past
that.
Distant Early Warning. I don't know. John, what are your thoughts on that one? I mean, are they an influence on you guys?
Yeah, that's Run to You. Yeah. Oh, sorry. John.
Say Rush and the Police are probably our two biggest influences.
Yes.
That I think that you could actually sit and pick out. But I think the beauty of this band is what I alluded to earlier with Scott's jazz training.
Yeah.
He listened to Spyro Gyra, Peter Gabriel,
Yeah.
Genesis, Stanley Clarke. We had a bass player that was a very, very straightforward bass player. I would say he was more like Bob Daisley of Ozzy.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And early on, I'm the original singer of the Splits, but we brought a singer in to make things a lot easier for all of us, who was very much a Bono fan.
Okay.
And I'm kind of I'm a new wave guy at heart, So whatever you take away from it is fine with me.
Yeah, right.
The song itself, it really has some significance for me because it was really about our final show, the first go around, and it also happened to be the night that I met my wife.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
fantastic.
So, I mean, to write that song in 2017, I actually wrote that song entirely in my head. And then when I finally went to demo it, I realized I didn't have perfect pitch and I was actually a step sharp.
Vocally or guitar playing?
Yeah, I mean, whatever you take away from it, hey, I'm doing my job. Whatever you take from it, I'm happy with.
Well, I always kind of feel bad and weird when I tell somebody about one of their original songs that it sounds like this or like that, because it doesn't. All I meant by that is that it just brought me back to a time that was a great time in my life. And I'm with you. I'm the same fan of that new wave music. But I was also a huge Rush. Yeah, I was also a huge Rush fan. So. It just felt good. It's one of those songs where it's like, damn, I liked it right off the bat. Yeah. Like it started and then boom, it switched directions. I don't know what, 15 seconds into the song. It was like
good melody, big melody on the intro and everything.
Hooky as hell. I loved it.
Hooks, hook, line, and sinker.
It's been good to us. It's been very good to us.
Yeah, nothing but compliments on that song. It was amazing.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So can we go into the room 8 feet behind you and talk about when you're writing and stuff? I mean, we're literally sitting in my lab, I call it, because my recording desk and everything, all the recording and composing happens over there. All the rehearsing for the shows happens over here.
And Scott, I'm going to apologize now because this is where he geeks out for a few minutes. So you and I are probably not going to say a whole lot.
So if you didn't get a beer, go ahead and get one now. But John, how
we will talk drums. Trust me,
we do need to talk drums. But how do you? Are there any? Like, I don't want to divulge all my secret plugins and all that kind of stuff. But what DAW are you?
I'll tell you all of them.
Yeah, you don't know any of them. You don't even know how to log into my computer. But
I'm an analog kid. There's no plugins. I don't believe in any plugins or computer nonsense. Ooh. I'm old school in that I am still doing all the demo work on an old Korg D3200. I actually have two now.
Wow.
I use one as a slave so I can record 64 tracks, but I'm not using anywhere near that. But I'm a hardware guy.
Okay.
I'm using vintage Marshalls, vintage Fenders, vintage Mesa.
Wow.
Whatever guitars suit me, vintage pedals, vintage racks.
Okay.
And the big thing that I always felt that we were missing back in the days, we never had a steady keyboardist.
Right.
My cousin Dan Schneider, or Dan Type as he goes by now.
Yeah.
came to the band about a year into it, and we never had authentic synth.
Right.
You know, I'm into Billy Currie of Ultravox, Rupert Hine of The Fix.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the guys that I think when I'm writing a song, that's what I want to hear the backdrop to.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing, I mean, it's necessity is the mother of all invention. I ended up picking up a Roland GR55 guitar synth.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, that's everything you hear on these two albums that you have.
Yeah.
Whatever synth you hear, that's it.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of limiting because it does not allow you to really get into pads and strings and a more natural presentation of certain instruments.
Right.
So
Because of the
for
tracking.
the new album,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean latency is a big problem.
Right.
Yeah.
On the song "She Isn't You" on Invicta, latency was a huge problem. And what we ended up doing originally on the demo, the guitar followed the piano, and it was one track.
Yeah.
We could not get a clean take no matter how I set the guitar up. And I have no problem setting up my own gear.
Right.
We just couldn't get it clean.
Right.
And we ended up cheating and doing a little MIDI conversion on that. But now everything, I mean, if you were to walk in that room, it was basically just a couple of Marshalls, a couple of Fenders, a bunch of guitars, and a synth.
Yeah.
Now you walk in that room, it's racks and racks of synth modules and a whole hell of a lot of Ensoniq keyboards. So,
Right.
that, you know,
Can we
Go ahead.
expound on the latency thing? Because I need to know, because I won't be able to sleep at night. Are you saying the latency was from your like Roland GK2 pickup going in?
That was
Yes.
always their issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
yes.
So you were getting
And-
latency from the MIDI pickup to your synth module to the recording. In those two devices that you have, they're tape? I'm not familiar with the models. Were those two devices?
No.
It's actually
The
playing.
two devices I'm using they're digital standalone recording studios.
Okay.
They call it a recording studio.
Okay.
But for doing demos, I mean, you could put a 320 KB product out with it.
Right.
I'm just not that guy. You know, I'm not a real. I don't want to say I'm ADD, but to spend that kind of time, I'd rather spend the money in the studio. You know, put a demo together, get it to Scott. From there,
Right.
you know, we meet, we figure out what we can change, what we can taffy pull into shape,
Yep.
or what we get rid of.
Right.
And from there, you take it to the studio and let the guys that really know what they're doing
Right.
do what they do, you know?
Now I have to know again, because if I won't be able to sleep at night. Are you on those digital workstations? Are you striping a track of click track, and then building upon that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we do have click going on.
Yes.
You're not snapped to a grid.
But on more.
You're not
But
snapped
on
to a grid.
mortality
Yeah.
curve,
Uh-huh.
mortality curve was really kind of a pain in the ass in so much as I had no clue what I was doing. The last time I was in the studio was
Yeah.
92.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Right.
So I just sat down at my kitchen table and started recording.
Right.
Well, then you take that to the studio and they say, sorry, we can't latch on to that. We can't hook up to that.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to scratch track everything, which was a real drag.
Yeah.
So for Invicta, everything was done to a click, and it was real easy at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
So that was the conversion.
I think some of the
that was your
it
your
made
conversion.
a gigantic difference, and now it's
Yeah. The conversion was at that point you had to like right now we're using in-ear monitors, and there was a conversion period where I was like, I need a monitor on the stage. I need to feel the air moving, all this type of stuff.
Old school thinking.
And it's just old school thinking until now I have in-ears and they sound amazing every time we plug in. That was your conversion of going, okay, if I'm going to go in the studio, I understand I'm not using Pro Tools or one of the grid-based DAWs. I need to have at least a click track, and then at not some random 98.78 BPM, but an actual 99 or whatever you want to have it at. And then you put that down, and then we can start making some magic that's all synced in. That's what I found in the studio too.
It was literally, I went from unfrozen caveman lawyer.
Yep.
To
Yeah.
to
That was when I was like,
to-
oh God.
Yep.
I mean, I'm a guitar player.
I'd do the studio guy. I'd say, Eric, just be patient.
Yeah.
He's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was really difficult because I had not been in the studio for 26 years.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you decide, okay, we're going to put this music out. It'll be real easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Hey,
whole
wake
game
up,
has
man.
changed.
It-
It's like
Yeah. What could
For me,
possibly
the
Yeah, I
in-ear-
mean, it's totally different.
the whole in-ear thing for me was like a dynamics thing. Even playing live,
I'm all for that. Totally all for that.
I could only have one in at a time because it took away from my dynamics.
Yeah.
And
I still have problems with in-ears.
Yeah.
yeah,
Because I'm my band, the Us Project, which is basically the Phil tribute band, I sing, I front the band, I play acoustic guitar with a 5, 6, 7, 8-piece band, but I always had my percussion, timbales, floor toms, a couple rototoms, whatever, and then
You're Sheila E. essentially. You're
right. So
He really is. He really is. If you,
I put in-ears in, and I was like, I don't care how good it is.
Right.
Get rid of it. I want 2 monitors, one left, one right.
Yeah.
well, once you get it dialed in, though,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with you, but even for me, like I've finally realized, okay, this actually sounds really good,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I learned how to hear and feel. So I adapted. It's just one of those things where you grow with it.
I
and
think I think the beauty of it really is, and I'm all for in-ear monitors.
Yeah.
My big complaint back in the day was I have to be stage right. I have to be, if you're looking at the stage, I have to be to the left of Scott.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah.
Because I'm left-handed, I'm left-eared.
Whoa.
But
Whoa.
Whoa.
Did you just say you're left-handed? So that's a curveball. You don't get too many lefty guitar players,
But I'm not a lefty guitar player. I play right-handed. But
I'm a left-handed
I'm
drummer that plays a right-handed kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, I always had to have the monitor to the right of me so that I could hear. And I'll tell you what, unless it was a JBL monitor,
Yeah.
I mean, hey, you stand in front of a blazing Marshall for years and years,
Yeah.
you're going to lose your highs.
You're right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if you're getting a Eminence or some goofball monitor,
Harbinger.
but what I really like about the in-ears is it's no different than when you're recording in the studio.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I can still feel the nuance and get the nuance of the guitar.
Yeah.
And if I'm, you're playing a certain way, it takes a little bit to get used to that.
Yeah.
But I'll be very honest with you.
Yeah.
I would much rather have in-ears than floor monitors today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
these
really
days,
would.
for sure. Me
Hey,
too.
And I'm a guy that's totally impervious to change. And
we all are.
Yeah.
Everybody
Say
in
that,
this
and-
room. Everybody in this room is exactly you.
Yeah.
And that's.
Agreed.
I mean, there's so many similarities between me and you, John, that it's actually kind of scary. We actually genetically might be on 23andMe, but
Hey, listen, there are times when we've done gigs with Ray's COVID gig, music that we're doing. the Giza is Gone stuff, where we've done shows where I've used all electronic drums and had both in-ears.
Yep.
And I've literally had to pull one ear out. And when we play live with the full-blown acoustic kit, I have both the in-ear in, and I'm fine.
Yep.
And like there might be some point of the show where something happens or goes haywire, and I just pull one even halfway out.
Yeah, you can do halfway.
And it's like, all right, I got my dynamics back. It's like really weird. Okay, now
It's just
You use both ears on the drums. Do you use a sub for the bottoms?
No, I was telling my wife I need to get one of those ass kickers.
Those sub.
It's going to mount onto my throne. Yeah, I actually, literally within the last month, I've had this conversation with my wife. I'm going to buy one of those. You know, but they're
absolutely
$350. It's going to mount to the bottom of my throne. It's going to make me feel my kick.
Yeah.
100% on board with that.
Right.
Well, boys, I'm going to, again, I don't get paid or I'm not endorsed. But if I could just give you the brand of in-ears that we use, I have $900 pair of in-ears. My wife doesn't know that.
She does
so
now.
Don't tell her.
She does now.
But I have
two pairs of those.
Yeah, I have a $60 pair of in-ears that have 10 drivers, 5 on each side. You got all the low end, all the highs, everything you need for $60 on Amazon.
And they smoke anything Shure's got.
They do.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes.
they're called the KZ AS10, and you can get them for about
You can get them from $40 to $60 on Amazon. They're amazing.
Again, KZ
awesome
AS10s.
Yeah. You can get 3 to 5 drivers.
$1,500 last summer.
Yeah.
On it.
Well, now if you need custom molds to fit your ear canal, that's a different story.
I do.
Yeah.
I have weird ears, like everything falls out.
I don't know if you can see.
I don't have cans. If I'm not using cans, I'm screwed.
Yeah, check these out.
I don't know if you can see these or not. I just bought these.
Yep, there you go. Look at that.
So all these they're the marshmallow ones where you squeeze them and stick them in and they expand and they're completely isolated.
Multiple sizes.
I think this was maybe $9.
If that, yeah.
So
wow.
It's the way to go in for me anyway.
Right. So we're big on, I mean, we're old guys using new gear is how I like to say it. I'm using a Behringer X32 rack for our intermix, and once you get your mix in rehearsal, I hit save on that setting. Any venue we go to, I'm like, all right, boys, don't worry about monitors. Ready? Boom.
And we never have.
Reload.
It's been perfect every time.
Reload. Here's your sounds. I'll see you on stage.
The guys in Phil, they all have in-ears.
Yeah.
All of them, and they do have that rack, and they say the same thing, and they're just fighting it, just please, Scotty, get in here, Scott, damn it, and I'm like, I know, well, I will, but I'm too used to being Sheila E, and I don't, I have to get it, I have to do it.
Yeah, you do.
But Bad Boy doesn't use in-ears.
Yeah.
The Us Project, some of the guys do, and then I need to get them and put that lock
it's
on
worth
my
the try.
hand.
It's worth it, Scotty.
Yeah.
It's totally worth it.
I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
You would think as a drummer that you're not going to get that bottom end punch.
You do.
And you do, actually, with these. It's like it just blows me away. That's why I'm like, when I'm playing, it feels like I'm playing to it's that CD quality sound in your head. It's awesome.
It's the 1987 Pioneer 100-watt home stereo
Smiley
that we all
face,
used to have.
EQ sound. Yeah.
Now, when you spin the dial and the needle would go.
Yeah, it's all that. And we have battled back. I mean, I relented in church gigs. I've been doing church gigs a long time.
Yeah.
And they all they were the first. Like, hey,
that's where I
there's
was
no
introduced
amps
to.
on stage.
Right.
Well, what do you mean? Guess what? There's no more monitors on stage. What do you mean? So that was kind of where I kind of got into the vibe of it, and I just embraced it. I've got a 63 Hammond C3 over in that side, but I got electronic drums.
Beauty.
I got electronic drums right here, and I got, a Kemper with Marshall stereo cabinets going on. and we can literally have essentially silent rehearsals using the technology. And I've got tinnitus from all those years of rocking and just.
What'd you say? I'm sorry, my ears are ringing.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully that kind of thing will go away this generation coming up that's going that is using this technology,
I think it's the whole idea.
Yeah.
It is nice to have that air movement and have a three-way, sub, mid, high
For
right
me,
next to you, kicking, blowing your hair.
That was always the hard part back in the day. That's why I needed, and I could not have a keyboard player or anybody behind me who shoved everybody off the other side, because I had to hear.
Yeah.
I had to hear his snare.
Yep.
Behind the, on the front line.
Yep.
And I had to feel his kick.
Yeah.
Because there's times, you're using a vintage Marshall, and this is, really before the age of attenuators and all that.
Yep.
The sound guys would scream at me every night.
Yep.
You're too loud. You're too loud. You're too loud.
Yeah.
I think with Kempers, I have some friends that are really pushing me toward Kemper.
Yeah.
But, I'm a vintage Marshall guy.
I understand. I am you once again. I am you. I've got 4 100-watt heads. I got JCM 800s. I got JCM 2000s. I got this Black Star rig that I'm using right here. I've recorded all of my latest record using this, and I totally am you. I'm gonna give you my secret weapon because I like you, John. I'm gonna give you my secret weapon. I went with the Kemper, and it's got all the sounds. I can go with a Fender Deluxe. I can go with a Fender Twin Reverb type of sound. I can have a tube screamer. I can go blues, or I can go Mesa, or I can go. All the effects are built into it. Delays, choruses. I'm not a chorus guy, but choruses if you want it. Octave pedals. I just did a show. I had to have an octave pedal. Boom! I found it. There it is. But the key is. It didn't feel like a tube amp, and I know what you're talking about when you're talking about when you hit a note and it's not there. It feels airy. It's got no body to it until
no nuance.
Yeah, until you get this. And this is a Schecter Sustainiac. And when you turn that sustainer pickup on and you hit a chord and it just rings all day long until you stop playing that chord, it feels like a tube amp on 11. So I'm using Sustainiacs into my Kempers in order to get the feel of a 100-watt tube amp that the sound guy hates every time I play.
It is amazing. And I toured with a national act since 2016 as a stage manager, and the guitar player used a Kemper. Well, both guitar players used Kempers.
Yeah.
And they both used one used 2 full Marshall stacks just as his stage volume. The other one, I think the same thing, but what was coming out front of house was just Kemper.
Right.
And what was just on stage was moving that air to give them that, make them feel like cozy,
And that's a big thing too. Like if you have a hot Marshall amp, what else do you have?
You got Greenback screaming
you
at
got
you. I mean,
hiss.
you got nothing
you
to
got
worry
hiss, or you got feedback.
It gets a little crazier than that,
Yeah.
I'm using 2104 Marshall combos. So I'm kind of a guy that likes open back speakers as well as closed backs.
Yeah.
So I'll go from, I have 278 2104s, but they're tubed differently. They both use 6550A snob glass. But in the one that I did a lot of the work early on with the splits, I'm using tungstol preamp tubes.
Right.
In the other one, where the late '90s, I did a little bit of cover Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff, all Sylvania snob glass.
Right.
So from there, now it comes to your miking technique, what bottom you're using.
Yeah.
And I don't use one amp's got G12 a G1265 and a G12M. The other one runs G12Hs. I mean, now you start getting into this real gigantic gray area of speakers and glass.
Right.
And I think for studio, I can cut to the chase. I think studio wise, I'll continue using what I use, but live, there has to be something where you don't have to worry about a backline, because nobody wants your backline.
Right. It's very true. Like if you can see this toaster right here, it literally fits in a camera bag, and anywhere I go, I literally can put that in an overhead compartment and just say, give me a 412 cabinet on stage. I'm good.
That's how we did on one-offs. Yeah.
Right. And
they are badass for sure.
Yeah. No, I will.
I'm totally with you.
Let's mention this. You and I might notice a different miking technique of off center to 3 feet away, centered, kind of a microphone placement. There's nobody that's going to see the cover bands, tribute bands we talked about earlier. Those people don't care if your delay is in sync with the song. They don't
whatsoever.
They don't even know. They have no clue. Does it sound kind of like the song?
Absolutely.
I'm
totally
good.
agree.
So what are we fighting that battle for?
First, no argument.
Yeah.
For studio. For the studio, I mean, hey, you pull out all the stops, do it the way you want. But for live, simplicity is everything.
Yeah, and consistency. Not just simplicity, but the consistency every time I play.
Dependability.
Consistent, absolutely.
Yeah.
Dependability is them.
So,
I mean, if you got to fly in somewhere, you got to be able to just plug and go.
Yeah. And here. So we've got those two things covered. That's the big part. So
totally agree.
Yeah. So we're done nerding out on the gear. Can we talk about real quick, and we'll land the plane here in a little bit, but can we talk about like are you doing a website? Are you doing social media only? Are you doing Spotify, iTunes? How are you distributing the music? Because it sounds like you're mostly at this point you're a studio band that when a gig comes up, you put it together and you go do it. But how are you in this era of 2023, getting the music out there to be heard and that type of thing?
Good question. That's been kind of the...
I introduced John to Reverb, of course. And, there was a lot of, I think, and he knows more of what the activity was from that. They do a lot of, sales type things like, hey, we'll help you do this, we'll help you do that.
And you're talking about Reverb Nation again, right?
Yeah, Reverb Nation.
Yep.
Yeah. For me, if I want to just send somebody there's, pictures, videos, and all the tracks, right, John? But then, of course, you got all the other formats that he's added everything to, which is
right.
The Spotify, iTunes.
I think the big problem with Reverb Nation, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you guys have a different view on that, but I think Reverb Nation is more social media for musicians. It's not really a place where people go to, not now anyway, maybe when they first came out.
I agree, yeah.
Nobody's really going to listen.
Yeah, it's kind of old school.
As far as distributing through them, I can tell you this, the new album will not be distributed through Reverb Nation.
No.
We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram.
Yeah, that's what you need to do.
Facebook.
The updated things. Spotify.
You're on every, Spotify, Apple Music.
Right.
I went so far as on Mortality Curve. You hit everything, Amazon, Deezer. And quite frankly, there was just no action. So on Invicta, we just went Apple and Spotify, and that proved to be a better, a better situation for us.
Yeah.
Again, as far as doing shows, hey, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I think where things really come down now at this point is we do very well in Europe, Australia, and the UK. Here in the States, it's no different than it was in the 80s. I think we've always been sort of I don't want to say misunderstood
Yeah.
musically, but I mean, the UK, we're killing it. Germany, killing it. Australia, killing it.
Yeah.
But so how do you get there? From that point, how do you move forward? You know, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it. And I guess it also comes to a point where, yeah, you love making the music. Yeah, you want to continue doing it. But at what point do you say, hey, enough is enough? And if it's not a profitable venture,
Yeah.
or at least paying for itself.
Yeah. I've never had it do that. I've never had it do that.
Well, that's because it doesn't
Yeah, I mean,
exist
when
in
do
the
you
musician
call it a
world.
day? I mean,
you can't.
I mean,
You cannot. John, you can't call it a day.
Well,
because you're an artist that can't stop writing music. Right?
I enjoy doing what I do. I mean, I can tell you this: the new album is going to be very, very different than what you're hearing now. I mean, I almost am afraid to say it's a little heavy synth. I wouldn't say synth pop.
Yeah.
But it's definitely different. It's definitely different, you know?
Yeah.
Well, driving, there's, still some driving tunes and that kind of thing, but
yeah, I would say that we've all in this room, we'll just say we're in a room together because it really feels that way. All in this room have reached a I don't know, as you would say, a age in which we are so embedded into creating and playing and performing that you couldn't stop if you wanted to. If you did, you would probably go insane. Like I just felt like I went on spring break and I couldn't relax for 4 days. I'm booking stuff. I'm doing things. I'm like, I'm being told, stop, relax. Then it was time to go back to work, and
so, one of the questions I have for you guys outside of that, you played the song, the one song you played. Is that one of your favorite songs? I mean, what brought you to Splitz and to talk to us?
Well, that's a good question because, like I mentioned early on in this, as we started this thing roughly a month ago, and I started it with the idea that we were doing a show and there was a bunch of bands on that list of all original bands in a showcase. And I was like, somebody should be talking to these original bands because they can't get a stage because Tom Petty's tribute band has all the stages.
Yeah.
Let's do something about it.
We got booted from our Meatloaf.
Yeah, we got booted from a date
tribute
because of a Meatloaf tribute band coming through town, and they asked us.
We
to
played
back up.
after them and sold the place out, which is fine.
Yeah,
but they rescheduled us over a Meatloaf band.
But so I think John reached out to us. I put an ad on Facebook. I paid for an ad to go out and asking if you're an original band that. And it's very difficult how to ask this. If you're a professional original band, or if you're an original band and you've got a video or you're on Spotify, that at least categorizes you of some level of professionalism. And I think John reached out to us and said, hey, you'd like to do something. And I listened to the material and I was like, that's professionally recorded. It's good songwriting. Heck yeah, I want to talk to somebody in Milwaukee. That was kind of how we got together. You should, and I don't want to badmouth anybody here, but you should hear some of the stuff that's people are asking to come on the show with, and I'm like,
my answer to that is that I've never heard you until I heard that song.
Yeah, he had not.
Now I'm going to listen to you more.
Yeah,
because I really liked it. I thought it kicked ass. So with that said, that's kind of the whole idea of why we're doing this, is to get original bands that people haven't heard to get heard.
Yeah.
Or even if we put shows together, where we can play together.
Network.
It's just basically networking.
I think
we're trying to spread your word.
At this point.
Safety
it really
numbers.
is.
Yeah. all the time.
Hey, you ever come to Atlanta, hook us up. I mean, get up with us.
Yeah, we definitely. The whole idea is to spread the word and get your music heard. And it's
so. Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure,
of course.
You know, being in Atlanta, do you guys remember the band called the Producers?
Was that the Brendan O'Brien?
I've been here 15 years, so I don't know. I've never heard of them.
What's he got that I ain't got? That's their big hit.
Yeah, was that the Brendan O'Brien early stuff before?
No.
Okay, who was in that?
It's Van Temple, Kyle Henderson, Wayne Famous, Brian Holmes.
Yeah. So if you were if you were in Atlanta in those days, that's not the Atlanta that's these days.
I would imagine it's very different.
That whole Buckhead music scene and you could go out and you could catch a band that you're like, wow, that's some
Animotion. Animotion was another band.
Yeah, that one I've heard of.
Yeah.
Not my thing, but Animotion was big out of Atlanta.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have you, being from where you're at, heard of a band called Dizzy Lane?
I have not.
Right.
Okay. It's an all original band. It's a buddy of mine. He's from there.
Yep. And that's
out of Milwaukee?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the point of all this. We're in towns, but we don't know the name of some really cool original bands.
Right.
And
they're just not getting heard.
Right.
I know. And that's what we're trying to just push along,
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a really cool show. I mean, I really didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, cool.
And I think it's really cool what you guys are doing because you're affording bands a platform and time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the big thing today that's really missing in the music industry, I don't think people really take the time to get to know with whom they're spending their money. I mean, for me as a kid, and maybe you guys as well, you bought a record, man. I read the liner notes.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
I mean, my liner notes, our liner notes in our stuff, we want you to know who the hell we are.
Right. It
and
means
what we're
something.
about, what we represent,
Right. Well, speaking of that, this is one.
I'm sorry. I agree with you 100%. If I really like your music, I'm gonna go buy. I'm a CD guy still. I want to open the thing and I want to see the guy's pictures and who's singing, who's playing guitar, who's playing drums, all that.
Physical media.
Yeah,
it is.
What are they using?
Right. Equipment that they use. I want to know it all. It's like if I really like them, and you're definitely a band I'm going to pursue.
Yeah.
Because I really dug the song I just heard.
Yeah. Well, we think that you're doing. Proper professional stuff, and you have all of the same reasons for doing it and the ways of doing it that we grew up doing.
Yep. Radio ready, 100%.
Yeah. So real quick,
albeit archaic.
Yeah. Well,
I can't wait to hear some of your stuff right now. I can't wait to hear some of your stuff as well, you guys. So.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to.
It sucks. Can't wait till you hear it.
I can't too.
I'd be on Facebook. Tag me. And then I would love to hear your stuff and share it.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here.
When we get done with this, stay on the line because I want to make sure that we have contact for Scotty. And I think, John, I have your stuff. But real quick, we're going to land the plane on this. John, first album that you were able to buy yourself that you cherished as a kid.
It's probably an 8-track.
Yeah, it could be 8-track.
Mine was.
Yeah, 45. Could be a 45.
Mine was an 8-track.
With my own money or what?
Yes. Yeah, you earned the bottles.
When you walked into Peaches, what did you buy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Peaches and 1812 were great.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the first album that I bought, it's not the first album I bought, but the first album that to this day I listen to and is absolutely paramount in everything I do, Ultravox Vienna.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I could run down the Kiss Alice Cooper thing.
Yeah, that's deep cut there.
Kiss Alice
you
Cooper,
went deep cut.
Yeah.
the first one with my own money that really meant something. Not the first album with my own money, but the first album that meant something, Ultravox Vienna.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Scott, you?
A Trick of the Tail by Genesis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
nice.
It was the first album after Peter Gabriel left.
Right.
Swear to God.
Wow.
Gotcha.
Great album.
Yeah, great album.
Hey, since we're there, thoughts on Shock the Monkey? One of my favorites.
I'll
I mean,
send you a
Fucking
video.
great. What do you mean?
I think, I mean, to me, that was amazing when I heard the synth thing going on there and
So when we have a minute, I'll share a video of me doing that song live.
dude, that's an amazing
Free
song.
camera.
Yeah.
And the way we do it, people always go, "What up?"
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah, no, that was a great song.
I can't wait. It's funny. I was just at my film director guy's studio 2 weeks ago, and he had started working on editing the live version of us doing that song.
Yeah.
And it happened to be almost finished, but it's right now it's live camera, front of house
Right.
sound, which is pretty cool. But when you see what we do that way and how we do that song, because that song, there's in the studio, you use a lot of loops and drum machine type stuff.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is everything's live, basically.
Yeah.
I'm playing all the percussion parts live
Yeah.
with a small drum track on drum machine part underneath.
Right.
But I'm playing part of the loop live,
Dude.
with my drummer. And then, so when you see and hear what I'm talking about, you'll be like, holy shit, of all the songs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we literally, don't run away, Scotty. I just had something for you. We really could literally talk about this type stuff at length, more length. Like I spent 4 months. I got the show that we did. We have a 90-minute special that I'm turning into a documentary slowly. But I spent 4 months on doing the camera editing, like you said, front of house, 3 or 4 or 5 other camera angles and stuff going on. And then I think 26 tracks of multi-tracking going on. So I had to mix the audio, mix the video.
Yeah, we're mixing that. That's the next part, but
yeah. I spent 4 months, literally 4 months doing that just for the concert footage. Now I got to put the B-roll footage.
That was just one song.
And that was one song. So no, that's the part that nobody that doesn't do this chaos for a living or for fun understands is the amount of time that it takes to actually produce something that is up to your standards as an artist and my standard as an artist and his standard and your standard.
Yeah. People think it just happens.
It doesn't just happen.
So this is for the drummer.
Yeah.
This is the drummer book.
Oh, Sticks and Skins. Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Sticks and Skins. Unique insight.
It's 32 pounds. It's a big ass book. It's heavy. I'm not. If it's not 32 pounds, it's 26 pounds.
Wow.
But, it's a big coffee table book.
Yeah.
I think they go for $75. And it's 500 pages with 400 drummers.
Wow.
That's cool.
Is that on Amazon or where could somebody find that?
I just go to sticksandskins.com, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where all they sell it.
Gotcha.
I just have to remember my mom had one.
Hey, your mom was a legend, just
that
so you know.
That is really cool, yeah. And it's cool that you guys had parents that backed you up and pushed you along. And, you know.
I used to say to John,
I did not have that.
Down there.
Yeah.
Get your shit together.
Yeah. Well, she knew if she was gonna
fact.
Yeah, if she was gonna put up with the noise, it better not be noise anymore.
Yeah.
Let's make some music, boys. Get it together.
Yeah.
And that's a Midwest. My mom was a Midwest Minneapolis girl, and it was the same thing. She would let us rehearse while she was sleeping, if it sounded good.
Yeah.
And that was.
Well,
true.
I can't say my parents or my dad didn't let me rehearse, but
yeah,
I just didn't have that extra push.
We really had a unique situation.
Yeah.
We really did.
Yeah.
As young players and even into our 20s, I was 25 when I left the group, so
Yeah.
we were still rehearsing there. And
Right.
as long as you're getting things done and you're not jag-bagging around, everything was cool. You know?
Right.
Yeah. Because that was the get it done generation, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Well, can I ask you this real quick?
Absolutely.
I'll ask you this real quick, and then we'll close out. Do you guys have children of your own, and are they following in your chaotic lineage of music?
Not me. Not that I know of.
Scotty.
Good question. Great answer.
Scotty.
Had to go there, didn't you?
Yeah,
Had to go there.
Had to
This
go.
is Spinal Tap.
Yes. John, you?
I have two. I've got one that plays drums infrequently,
Yep.
and I have one that just stopped playing. He was in a ska band,
Oh, cool.
and he just stopped playing in his mid-30s. I had kids real young.
Yeah.
My kids were all road babies. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't have kids. And you don't
Neither
have,
do I.
and
I
you
have
stepkids.
I
right?
have 4 amazing stepchildren.
Yeah. And it's interesting that that is kind of a common theme here is I have all of the toys to make the noise and no one to give it to. It's kind of interesting.
My stepchildren actually raised me.
Yeah, I think they did too. Well, boys, hey, we really appreciate you guys. Go ahead, Scotty.
No, nice talking to you guys.
Yeah, man, we really appreciate
It's great having you guys on.
and
absolutely enjoyed every minute of it.
yeah.
And John, it's nice to see you on a technical, advanced technology like this.
Yeah, isn't
right
that kind of odd, huh?
It's the
now.
Jetsons.
He didn't even have he had a flip phone.
Yeah,
Swear to
yeah.
God.
No, it's a
The
year.
razor.
It's a year.
Well,
Okay,
listen, guys.
12 months.
Hey, we're gonna close out the show. Stay on the line, and we want to make sure we get some context afterwards. And thanks again for coming on.
Yes, definitely.
Guys.
Cheers.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
You're watching the Original Music Podcast with your hosts Raymond Hems and Rick Gathman.